Addicts by Sideline Sports Network. Always brought to you by Game Day Vodka. Game Day Vodka is an American-made, American-distilled, American-sold vodka. We had it at our tailgate this past weekend. We also had their spike drink, which seemed to be extremely popular, not only with the ladies that were there, but also the gentlemen. They also agreed with it. Chip also seems to like them when he comes to the tailgates as well, because it's not like any other seltzer. It's actually vodka mixed with the actual fruit juice that's named to be in there. It's not like sparkling water or something to that nature. But anyways, moving on because we're glad to be partners with Game Day Vodka. You can find them at ABC Wine and Spirits. I'm going to quit saying that Publix because Publix doesn't in any way, shape, or form sponsor this podcast or anyone else's endeavors that are going. So I'm going to quit saying Publix. You can find them at ABC Wine and Spirits. And you can also find them online at GameDayVodka.com. Obviously, tonight we've got a couple of things to talk about. We did get a top recruit in 2024, supposedly the number one kicker for 2024. He decided to commit to Florida State. Go watch his video because it is. I mean, I haven't seen a young man that pinpoint on with kicks in quite some time. He's kicking from a hell of a good distance too. So, what is his name? If somebody would throw it out there, because I sure don't know what it is. We'll find it.
Oh, it's Jake Wigum, Weinberg, I think is what his name is.
Weinberg, that's it.
Yeah, Weinberg.
I was trying to think of it off the top of my head, but the staff offered him like 2 weeks ago. They really liked what they saw. He's the number one kicker in terms of basically the Colts kicking competition as well. He basically excelled in both of those as well. But people were talking about him reclassifying to 23. I understand the concerns of Brian Fitzgerald and everything like that, but I think this is a good kid that you can bring in, develop, get him there. And you also got some other kickers on, with Aiden as well. That's a walk-on kicker with us also. So we'll see how those competitions go, and we'll kind of see how he develops if he does come to Florida State by that time.
And also, we've got the news of Marcus Woodson moving on to Arkansas. From what it seems like, he's going to be moving to a lateral position, from what I understand. I think he's going to be a DB coach there. I didn't hear that he was going to be a defensive coordinator or moving up in any way, not at this point. So everybody knew on this panel, for say, we've been saying it for a couple of months now, that we expected Marcus Woodson to move on, possibly a Chris Thompson also moving on eventually. We knew at the end of this month, the end of December, that his contract would be up. So we fully anticipated that he would be moving on to do something else. And James and I have talked about it multiple times that Norvell's never got to fire anybody. They always just seem to get hired elsewhere, and he either promotes within or he does find someone outside of what he's already got at the program, but still within his coaching tree. With this one, I don't know that he can stay with inside of his coaching tree, so to speak, but he does have options to promote with inside. One being Corey Fuller, which is in an off-the-field role right now with high school relations. And then you've got Ratcliffe that's also off the field, right?
Yeah, he's director of player relations on that one as well.
So both of them are in player relations.
Mm-hmm.
What worries me about promoting these two from within is we already kind of can tell what they can do recruiting, right? Because they've been here. So if this is what they can do recruiting, then you're not really stepping up beyond what you've already been getting. If not, you're taking a step down because Woodson at least was able to get names here. So are you taking a step back, or is it because they don't have the steering wheel to say that they want to recruit? So we'll get everybody's opinion on that, and then we'll see where that moves to. If you were to pick, we'll throw out all the outside noise from pulling in the Cromarties or the Grays or any of them. Just say we promote with inside. Who's the better option to promote from with inside? Is it Ratcliffe or is it Corey Fuller? Taylor, you can start. Who do you think's better to move up?
Well, I will say this on your point about hiring within. It's hard to really fathom this because really when you think about it, Woodson's had some pretty good relationships, but it was a lot of the off the field personnel that was really recruiting at a high level and getting some of these relationships put in. Now, when it looks like it, Woodson did get some relationships here and there, but there was a couple that you could really see kind of pinpointing towards other coaches. So I think the off the field staff did a really nice job in this. Greg Moss is another guy, defensive analyst, that I really like as well. Right now, if I had to decide between all three options, I think Moss and Ratliff would be kind of that forte of what you're looking for if you're promoting within. Corey Ford, I think, is a little bit more older, more of a want to step back a little bit from the coaching kind of things a little bit more. I think he's more suited for that off the field role now at this point. He's kind of wanting to enjoy his time with his family. His kids are growing up and everything like that. I think more so it could be a situation where Greg Moss or Ratliff kind of comes in that situation. Now, if we move to a CROMARTIE or, something like that, maybe we could do that in the time frame. But just right now, if you're hiring from within, I think Ratliff or Moss would be kind of your two options there.
I would say Moss based upon the trend. So last year, Dillingham left. He brought Tony Toka, or however you say his name, Tokarts. And a lot of people who haven't been around didn't realize that Tony did a lot of coaching. Like Tony was like there, so it wasn't really that much of a disconnect. And you had guys like he's worked with Atkins, he's worked with Norvell, and I think where I've kind of tried to talk a little bit, and I saw a lot of people tweeting at us, Chris, probably nobody has more interaction behind the scenes as I do with a lot of these coaches. And not just talking about stuff. I'm just talking about like literally, like I won't say which coach, but you could connect the dots. They come to Jacksonville all the time, right? I said, hey, I have a cigar lounge literally right around the corner, man. Whatever you want. If y'all want a break, come on over here. It's on me. You ain't even got to worry about it. Do you know the man I work for? When do you think I'm going to have a break? And that's what the coaches, like the on-field coaches and the GAs, off-field guys who I've got an opportunity to know a lot more because of my friendship with a guy named John Heron, a.k.a. Hova. They work really, really hard Monday through Thursday. Unless there's a home game, then they're going, they'll go Friday, Saturday. But their whole world is basically trying to recruit and develop relationships and stuff with that. Then they go see their families. They're not really coaching. Sometimes they'll check out a practice, but Fuller is a little bit more involved, but they're not supposed to be involved in the coaching. So when you haven't coached this position on a college level with a guy who commands excellence, holding people to a standard, man, that's a whole paradigm shift, man. And I'm getting Mike ain't a punk, man. Like he might not, just because we joke about him not firing people, he is fiery though. He will get that's like a 180. Like if you've never been in that environment to like going into that. So that's why I say Moss, because he's there. He understands what Coach Fuller, the football coach Fuller wants done. He has a rapport with some of the players already. And I think there's just that, unless they go, and that's just in-house. But like you said, Chris, Corey Fuller, got a son that's really, really good in baseball, likes to travel, see his son play. And he's got coaching experience, but it was some years ago at FAMU. And I think I think they could all do a great job because they played it. But I'm just looking at it from a perspective of what you have for this 2023 season. Is this, and you have Mike Alford saying, all right, we got proof of concept. Now I can write the check. Is this the decision that you want to do when you now have everything that you want going the way you want it to go?
Well, what point I will bring up before we move on with any names and outside, from bringing outside in, I do want people to go look and see that, not based off of one, not two, but three major sites. And I'm not naming them because I got in trouble for naming a couple of them last time. But three major sites, do your due diligence, check out what those three sites are. And Marcus Woodson's considered the 8th, 7th, and 9th best DB coach in the nation. We just lost him due to him going to Arkansas. But his concept was not working here at Florida State as far as recruiting goes. Can he develop guys? Well, if you look at Ronaldo Green, you would say yes. If you look at who was it, Brown or another one, I can't remember his name, you would say that they regressed and they're not doing as good as they were even their freshman year. So is that based off of the players? Is that based off of coaching? I know that none of us as fans at Florida State have been excited about what our DBs are doing or what it looks like the coaching is doing for the DBs on development. So if you're stating that that's the 8th best and you're stating that there's 7 better than him in front of him, and you go look at the list of the 7 that are supposedly better, the number 1 guy is University of Southern Cal is their DB's coach, which I can't think of his name right now, but that's considered the number 1 guy. I just watched USC play, and their DBs couldn't cover anything. So it looked absolutely horrendous. So I don't want to go after the number 1 guy because they say he's the number 1 guy. I don't take much merit into all these projections and all these points of grades that they put together for these coaches because I think about a lot of it's a bunch of bullshit. Like you got to base that off of who you're playing. You got to base that off of strength of schedule. You got to base that off of what type of receivers are those DBs covering week in and week out. On this ball game, it just proved that they ain't been playing against too big of talent because Tulane just absolutely in a quarter came back and won a game. So the DBs obviously didn't do all that well. So let's talk a little bit about who's on the outside. And a lot of people, yes, Antonio Cromartie is not the key person that everybody else would want to go after because of lack of experience. He hasn't been a DB coach anywhere, but he has been at Texas A&M. He has been an off the field type guy, but you're not going to tell me that he doesn't have the ability to be a good, if not great, DB coach when he was one of the great DBs that played at Florida State and went on to the NFL and also did very well. He understands the position. And James has said it, and I have said it, and multiple people, C.J. Wilson has said it. I believe Taylor has said it somewhere in the past, that if you go and get into these spaces on Twitter with Crow, 10 minutes is all it takes for your IQ level to go up with football. Crow knows the game. He understands the game probably better than most people. He also does a very good job of explaining the game to people that aren't on the same level as him, so he puts it in layman terms. So Antonio is a guy that I would want because I think he'll recruit better than most people that we're talking about. The reason that I say that is because look what Deion Sanders is doing by just saying, hey, I was in the NFL. I was an elite player in the NFL as a DB. I mean, he's got the number 1 DB from 2022 following him around because he was an elite DB. So Antonio Cromartie could use those same tools and say, look at what I did in the league. I can show you how to get there, especially with all the tools that Florida State will give me. So that's the reason why I say Antonio is a good guy. A lot of people are hung up on his first year here at Florida State, that he had a bad attitude, blah, blah, blah. I don't know where that came from. I really don't.
Florida State.
Yeah, so when he played, everybody says that he was a terrible human being. Why? I don't know.
Without a doubt. Okay. He was 18 years old.
But James,
38. I was a terrible person at 18. Coming from where I came from. A lot of things have changed.
Kind of let them know how Crow's grown, though, because I don't think they realize what Crow is now versus what he was at 18 years old.
He's nowhere near the same teammate as he is as a man right now. Like, this guy is if anything, again, forget the coaching for a second. This is maybe an Antonio Cromartie love fest right here. Cromartie is a great father, a great man who went through some things. If you want to judge him about how he was, a lot of us said how he were between 17 and 20. Go back and look at the entire history. Look at, how I'm not going to go into, that's his personal stuff to go into, like how he grew up, or you can go do the research. But what he did was he came in highly touted. There was some really, really good guys. And, okay, he faced some adversity. He also came in, and you know what he did his junior year? He went in, he tore his ACL competing, like when he shouldn't have been competing, but competing with a high school kid at Bobby Bowden's football camp, blew his ACL out in the end of July, and rehabbed and probably could have played that Clemson game. Definitely could have. That was the fastest rehab I've ever seen. To go and be a top 20 draft pick, to go and play years in the NFL, to play with some of the greatest guys. And yes, we've seen some of the things, and some of them are funny. I even think Drake made a bar about him, but and he forgot his kids' names and all that other stuff. But like, look at him. He's very transparent, very open-minded, very much so I put it like if so much so that when I picked up the phone when he was at Texas A&M, I called him about a kid named Jamie French. Jamie, this is what everybody needs to know about recruiting acumen of Antonio Cromartie and the character in which what he does. I pick up the phone and I said, Crow, I got a kid who just did this, blah, blah, blah. All right, let me look him up. Looked him up. JC, got to see him. Figure it out. Figured out how to get him out there. Literally developed a relationship with this young man. Calls him, talks to him about what it's like to be a high-profile prospect. This kid has never been – I can't tell him what it's like to be a five-star prospect and an All-American and go through high school and be humble and be all these different things. Crow can. He's talking to him about stuff off the field, which is really what this is starting to become about. A lot of these guys mentally can't handle the stress and the stuff that's going on. So Crow did those things at Texas A&M. He coached up guys at Texas A&M. He did a lot of things that are just great. But again, to hold somebody with what they were their freshman year in college and not look at who they are to this day. Like if we are all the same person that we were 20 years ago, that means we've had no growth. That means you're just mentally immature. I think that's not fair. You can dislike the fact that he doesn't have on-field, like as much on-field coaching experience, which he's also done the NFL. He's done NFL internships, coaching internships. He's done all the things. Like his resume would bode well for about almost anybody outside of your Graves, or guys like what's my guy Jim Leonard, or some of these other names that everybody's throwing around that probably aren't going to come here. If Jim Leonard comes, I would do a backflip, by the way. But yeah, Cromartie just like I said, Cromartie as a teammate, okay, I can see that. He was really, really good. So you kind of let go a lot of that stuff. Cromartie right now as a man, hell yeah, I want him. I want him to coach every kid that I got.
Right. And this is what I'm basing off of, because someone thinks I'm wrong about what I'm saying. They're saying that South Carolina is the number one. No, Dante Williams is considered, and this is one website, not all of them, just one. Dante Williams is the number one DB coach in the country, and he's at USC, University of Southern Cal. On that same list, Gray is at number 3. Corey Raymond at LSU is considered number 2. I don't know if he's still there or not, but I'm telling you the list that I'm looking at. Number 5 was Charles Kelly. Charles Kelly is now over – where did he go?
He's at Colorado.
He went with Deion. So that's the list that I'm talking about. And like I said, I don't listen to those lists as nature of it being 100% correct. I am just stating what was said was that one of the number one guys was Desmond at USC, and I disagreed. Someone said, what about Greg Reed? Greg Reed, you should put him in the same category as Crow. Only Crow has, to my knowledge, more internships as in the NFL. He's been at Texas A&M, helping as the DB coach there, whether it be assistant or whatever he is. So I would say Crow has more on his resume than Greg Reed does. But if you also tell me that Greg Reed was coming to be the DB coach at Florida State, I give you a thumbs up and say let's go, because of what he was as a DB. I don't think people are looking at this correctly. I don't think you go hire an unproven head coach. When I say unproven, it means they haven't coached in at least 2, 3, 4 years as a head coach somewhere. I do agree with that. But as a positions coach, why would you not go get one of the greatest at their position to do it? That doesn't – I understand that all of them can't be great teachers, but you're not going to tell me that Crow would be a bad teacher or that Greg Reed would be a bad teacher when I just told this to Taylor and Chip before we started. If you go look, Bill Belichick used to be a football player. Nick Saban was a football player. They all played in college. Bobby Bowden was a college football player. So all of these guys that are great, they were college football players. And like I told them, they only had one thing against them. They were white and they were undersized. So they didn't end up being great as far as playing, but look at their brain ability to be a coach. Now they're considered some of the greatest of all time. If you go after Gray from South Carolina, he is one of the top paid from what I just read. He is handsomely paid at South Carolina. Do we write that check to get Gray and make him make a lateral move, or do you offer him something better as far as he has the potential to move up? Like, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how you get Gray because that's swinging for the fences. So kind of put in perspective for me, what do you do to get Gray to come to Florida State from South Carolina? Taylor, you can start.
I mean, in reality, you have to do a lot in terms of that. But, Michael Alford is committed to being able to be successful next season. He understood that we're a 10-3 football team at this point. And, that's a name that I think will be at the top of your list. I would definitely think that would be a guy that you would look after. Not saying that you should heavily pursue right now, but I think you should at least evaluate him at this time. So I think also, and this is a name not a lot of people are talking about, and this is Troy defensive coordinator Shill Wood. He's actually a guy that I'm pretty familiar with in terms of defense and scheme. Used to be a Wofford head coach or a Wofford player a long time ago, back in 2010 or 2000. I think it was 2007 to 2010. And it's a top 10 defense for Troy. Carlton Marshall, a all-time leading NCAA tackler, is no longer going to be there. I think this is a time where he may move on at this point, and it could be a Power 5 position role, and hopefully being able to get elevated to that defense coordinator spot if the defense coordinator moves on with Adam Fuller. So that could be a possible landing spot for him as well. I think Gray is the top option, of course. I think Chip West from Syracuse, I think, could be another option, DB coach over there. Maybe Trey Bell, the Akron defensive backs coach, was previously at Florida State, moving over there. I think Gray should be your top option no matter what. So I think that should be your guy, and then you kind of look at other options past that.
I think also, the only way you're going to get him is if he's just a defensive backs coach, so you got to give him a co. The problem is you already have co-DC with Randy Shannon and Fuller right now. Also, do you want both coordinators in the secondary? Fuller coaches safeties right now. Obviously, this guy will coach corners. Off the field guy, again, looking for both of the things that they can do that has on-field recruiting acumen, but also as coach would be Tyler. Make sure I'm saying it, Tyler Van Dyke down in Miami, and a lot of people have been clamoring to get him a job because of. There's no disrespect. Everything that FSU fans kind of feel like Kewan would have been for us in Central Florida, Van Dyke has been for Miami down south. So it's been very pivotal, actually, even with some battles head up the cornerback from the Browns, the top cornerback and his brother at UCF, very pivotal in the recruitment of those guys. Bringing somebody like him on board, not only does it give guys a little bit of understanding of a guy who can speak their language a little bit younger, help recruiting, and also can help with those things. But the biggest thing is that's been our weakest position. And I don't care. I think I can see overpaying and spending to strengthen and bolster that. Even if you get a corner coach, find us 2 off-field guys that we can develop, that can speak the language, that are literally there to coach up some of these guys, because there's no reason Knowles should have regressed the way that he regressed this season. After coming out and just the Miami game he had 2 seasons ago was amazing. But to not be able to rise to that level, that's clearly a mental thing. And we just want to make sure we get that disconnect fixed.
I will ask this for Chip too, and this is kind of a question I've gotten from some of my followers on social media as well. So I know that Florida State had gotten a couple of DBs transfer-wise and also in recruiting. With Woodson being moved on at this point, I've had a couple like Edwin Joseph, CJ Hurd, a couple of those guys commented on the Woodson thing. Do you think that impacts those guys coming into the program? I know that, all those guys have signed minus Cypress at this point. Do you think that, kind of leaves a bad taste in some of those guys' mouths and maybe they move on to a different position at this point?
No, I don't think it does. I think they bought into what Norvell has been producing on the field, what he's preaching. I want to bring up a name nobody's mentioned, and I know it's extremely reaching for us to even James Colsey. James has done a hellified things at A&M, and he would be a big-time grab for us. But I think whoever we get as a DB coach has to be able to reach, I don't want to say inner city kids and everything. He needs the premier athletes. Your DBs are some of the most premier athletes that you'll have as far as speed, ability to cover, and it's going to take somebody that knows these South Florida, Central Florida, can pull these kids back in, and it's going to take somebody that has FSU ties. Whether we want to admit it or not, I mean, I'm any of the names that we mentioned, I'm not really familiar with, nor am I really impressed. But when you mention Cromartie, because I know what he did at FSU, I know what he did in the league. Colsey, I know what he did at FSU. Greg Reed, I know what he did at FSU. Like, having one of them in that position to me feels like it would fare a lot better for us.
And I think the reason why it would fare better for us is because, one, they know how to sell the school because they came here. Two, they know everywhere to go to get the dogs in Florida, which that's what I'm worried about with bringing in some of the guys from the outside. Like if you go after the guy, I forget which name the guy brought up, but he's up north and he's never coached in the South. He doesn't have any ties to the state of Florida. I don't want to bring someone in like that. We've already been through that. And like I told people, your position coaches in this program need to be your recruiters, your top guys that can recruit. Because to ask Adam Fuller to be it's not fair. Alex Atkins is going to do a good job, but he's also a co-offensive coordinator. He's not having to focus 100% on being just a coordinator, so he can go and recruit. The reason that he was moved up to co-offensive coordinator is because of how well he can recruit and how well he is at a positions coach and development. So I think you have to get someone that has ties to the state of Florida. We've went around this merry-go-round with guys that don't have ties to the state, and it doesn't look good in recruiting every year. It's starting to take a downward spiral, and it doesn't look good. Luckily, we got Cypress, which I give Adam Fuller full credit because everybody said he was a huge part of pulling Cypress in to get here. So that's the first time I've heard Adam Fuller's name brought up recruiting-wise in quite some time. So kudos to Adam Fuller for bringing Cypress on, but we got to get a guy that's going to get Florida kids excited about coming to Florida State.
And I'll ask this too. Do you think there's going to be kind of a timetable for this, or do you think it's going to be kind of a quicker process? Because, I mean, even a guy like Jeff Halfway, the head coach over there at Boston College, it could be a situation where he gets fired, and next thing you know, Florida State can kind of be in the mix for that as well. Do you think it's going to be like a week process just to kind of get somebody in? But, I mean, there's not many recruits we're going after in February. Transfers are going to be enrolling pretty soon at this point. Is there anything possibly with that, with timetables?
Yeah, I think you're going to try. I think they'll see. You'll see it. Obviously, we're in January now. February starts tour duty. March starts spring ball. So while it doesn't seem like it's that far away, if 2023 is anything like 2022, it'll be here before we know it. So I think in the next week or two, because what also has to happen is if you're going to get somebody, let's just say like a Torian Gray, or even like somebody like what you just saw the Boston College's head coach, if they fire, a lot of those things happening. They still have to make plans. They have to be able to get here. They have to be able to get acclimated, watch film, do all these different things. But I think Mike's going to give it. I am very certain that Mike has handed a list of compliance for them to be able to go through and start doing the diligence to see if they can even hire some of these guys. because while it's new, I don't think that this came as a shock that he wasn't going to be here. So I just think they just did a really good job of holding it close to their vest.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was. I think that there's been conversations with these guys that we're all talking about. Not all of them, but there's been conversations with replacements as far as DB coaches go on the outer realm because they knew this was coming. I mean, Florida State knew they weren't going to renew Woodson's contract a while back. I mean, it's not like, oh shit, we woke up today and Woodson's gone. No, we knew he was leaving. We knew we weren't going to renew his contract. It wasn't that he got fired. It was the fact we knew, okay, we're not retaining you. We're not bringing you back. We're not giving you an extension. So obviously you started talking to people that you were interested in. There's no way that you didn't. I mean, that would be, if it's true and we haven't talked to a soul, then we're one of the dumbest programs in the country. There's no way you haven't spoke to people that you thought about replacing them with. So Taylor would say that Gray from South Carolina is the guy that you've got to have at the top of your list. And I can't deny that. I'm not a fan of Gray's personally. And that's just because I don't know how well he recruits. But
yeah, I don't think he's the most realistic, but I think he is your top option at this point to at least pursue.
So do you feel like Florida State's going to promote from within? And
I think that's the safer choice right now. I would take the field. Or I wouldn't take the field over that. I would take from within.
James, do you feel like we're going to try to hire outside, or do you think we're going to promote from within inside?
I mean, I think I think you'll end up promoting from within, giving somebody a shot. I don't like that per se, but I think it's more so Fuller's coming back. Fuller will be here for another 2 years. And because you have a window in 23 and 24 where you can't bring in somebody who's going to shake up the apple cart. You got to bring in this person has to fit and fall in line with what everybody else has got going. And without really knowing who Mike has relationships with outside of all of this, it's tough for me to be able to predict that. And again, because like I said, Mike, it's not nothing bad. It's not a knock on Mike. I actually like it. It's just Mike is an on top of it type of coach. So you're gonna have to get after it.
These Manny Diaz comments are really cringing me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie to you. That would be something.
Well, I mean, come on, man, he's killing it at Penn State. Ain't you seen what he's done?
I mean, yes, he has, but
we're not going. I cannot see in any realistic way that we would ever go after Manny Diaz by.
Hey, he helped decline Miami, and I mean.
As a DB's coach, though, I mean, he's got a DC job at Penn State. He's not coming here to be a DB coach.
No, he's not.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's not realistic. It makes no sense.
No.
I think I'm with James on this. I don't want a line-ass Cuban on my staff.
No, me neither. I'm in 100% agreement. I don't want no line-ass Cuban on there either. So, do y'all feel like Adam Fuller is a long-term piece for Florida State, as in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think because I don't see him. He's older. At least he looks older. I don't really know how old Adam is. I need to go look this up. I don't want to disrespect Coach Fuller because Coach Fuller very well could be like 51 years old and just looks a little older. But
hell,
I think
Norvell don't look 44. Norvell looks like he's like 60 with all that gray hair.
Yeah, that's that gray hair with Mike. But I think it's more so because of the demeanor of a great DC. Like, look at Manny Diaz. Manny Diaz is an okay DC. But he's a politician. You have to be a head coach, you have to be a politician. You have to be a recruiter. You don't have to be the greatest recruiter. You just have to be good in a room, at least when they get you there. And I don't see that personality from a Coach Fuller. I see a guy who, and this is why I like him. I see a guy who, when you're beating Boston College to death and your backups give up a big play, all you can think about is your backups giving up a big play. That's very much so D coordinator. That's not that's just not the demeanor of what you want your head coach to be. So I think that's part of it. I think he's a guy who I could see him being especially if you do again 23 and 24, he could be a guy who could be your long-term DC and help give consistency.
I will say this as well. I am a huge fan of Adam Fuller. I've been for quite some time. I know a lot of people gave him some flack with that 2020 pass rush. That was not the greatest in the world, having 9 sacks in 10 games kind of situation there. But, I mean, overall, they consistently got better each and every year. Let me just go back and look at this. I mean, we tried to blitz DJ Uiagalelei in the Clemson game. It was a DB blitz, free rusher. Nobody was coming towards him. Missed the sack. When you miss the sack, threw a freaking 65-yard pass down the field for a wide open touchdown at this point. I mean, you had the right scheme in place, and I think that's what not a lot of people think about. You had the scheme in place. You just don't have the players or the necessary players to make that happen. And I can make excuses and say Fabian Lovett didn't play 5 or 6 games, and that's true. He's one of our best defenders, and shout out to him for returning next season. But just overall, I think without some of those guys, you had Jared Verse that was out for a couple of weeks as well. Just some of the guys that were in there. I mean, if you had quality depth at certain positions, I don't think you would have much of a concern with Adam Fuller as it goes right now. And I just think you have to kind of look at some of those as you go through. I don't think he's as bad as a defense coordinator as you have, but the problem is on top of that is if you fire Adam Fuller, who are you going to hire? Who is going to come to Florida State and be a better defense coordinator than what he is right now, better than what their situation is? So if you're a Jim Leonard over there at Wisconsin, they just hired a new head coach, which he's actually leaving the program, but is he really the best option? I mean, honestly, when you're looking at some of those guys, there's 3 very, very elite options as defense coordinators. But past that, what options do you have is the better question I want to kind of figure out. I don't understand where fans are coming from in this terms of, well, Florida State can do so much better. Well, show me the options. Show me the realistic options of what you have. I
know this. We would all take Ohio State's DC until the other day. I watch games nowadays, and I think about what would our fan base say. And Chris saw firsthand why I don't like sitting in the stands at a game. I like to sit in front of a TV at a tailgate or something like that and watching it that way. But if we made the same critiques, oh my God, somebody's wide open. Well, we saw that a lot of TCU versus Ohio State. Elite, 2 elite defenses over there. Yeah. Georgia, a lot of mistakes going down in Georgia and with Ohio State. All types of talent, elite defenses. If we talk about name brand recognition, nobody had a bigger name than Alex Grinch. I remember people wanted Alex Grinch. Now you just saw him get torched by Tulane. My guy who was the head coach, Jimmy Lake, who was a phenomenal defensive coordinator, was at Washington for years and then became the head coach to be fired. It just, you got to have cats. You talked about, there was one of my good friends, again, another knowledgeable defensive mind, and Leroy Smith. We're sitting there at the tailgate. We're watching the touchdown that it looked like the Oklahoma kid just walks in. We blitzed. We literally ran a blitz, and the guy just got pushed out. If he executes, it's a perfect play call, perfect stop. The only, as I heard, when I used to hear my coaches say it, I never understood it till I got into coaching. They used to say, the only way it could be better is if I run it myself. That's the only way I can make it better. And unfortunately, that's sometimes there's a lot of things but when you've seen it progressively get better. When the pieces have gotten better, you've seen the puzzle look good. And I don't understand what planet you fire a top 15 defensive coach to get better. Like after he's like consistently, it's like you can see it get better. Like you are seeing it. And on top of that, he's been put into some very, very, very precarious situations. I love Mike to death, but Mike is good to go for it. Once we get to the 40, like it's 4 down territory. I don't know if you realize it. That's not a really great position to put your defense in with their backs to their goal, their end zone. So you got to just look at those things. And I think, but I think when I look at everybody with the aspirations, Alex Atkins fielded calls this year. He answering them things next year. I can promise you that. Same thing. And then Tony will come up there. And when Tony gets promoted, Tony will be the hottest name, especially coming off of a Jordan Travis. And if he can make a Duffy. I mean, I'm just going through all of the different coaches that you have. Those guys all look like somebody that you can see. But I think Fuller is a guy who could be here for 10 years.
Well, I think, your best case scenario, if you do promote with inside on your DB coach, you go hire some real off the field recruiting staff. You put together a off the field staff that can recruit their absolute best in Florida, which you've got some guys, some pieces you have already, but you need to add more. You don't want to get into a scandal like LSU's in. You don't want to do that, but you want to get some off the field people that can really recruit the area of Florida, because we're losing. There's too many kids leaving the state of Florida to go to Georgia, to go to Alabama, to go to Michigan, to go to Ohio State, and you're not pulling enough of those guys out of their states to say that it's an equal trade, because the best athletes are coming from the state of Florida. There's no comparison. So you got to lock these kids down and get them to only come a couple of 100 miles from down south or central Florida versus them going all the way up to Athens, Georgia, or going all the way up to fucking whatever, Ohio. You got to do a better job at recruiting this area.
I got a question for y'all, and I kind of want to navigate to a different topic, but same kind of realm. I wanted to kind of get Chip's opinion on this, and then y'all can kind of chime in as well. Jamie Robinson, declaring for the NFL draft. Safety position is wide open on that side. You're bringing in potentially a new defensive backs coach at this point, and you're trying to figure out the pieces. Who do you think is going to step up into that safety role that Jamie had? I know it's hard shoes to fill at this point. You have Akeem Dent on one side. You're trying to figure out the other side. Who do you think is going to be the guy that steps up there?
Wow, that's first of all, I wish Jamie all the best in the future. I think he's going to make hellified waves in the NFL. But I mean, that's a tough one, because you've got a lot of guys that will have to step in. Like Akeem's going to step up his game, holding down one side of the field. It's going to have to be an open competition, and whoever we hire as the DB coach is going to have some hellified shoes to fill on this one. I don't really know how else to answer that other than that's going to be hard. That's going to be a hard one to fill.
Well, with bringing in Cypress, which in my opinion is a lockdown corner mostly, I would like to try AZ out personally, or give Brown more opportunity. But it's going to be like what Chip just said, it's going to be an open competition between Dent and Brown, because who else do you have that safety wise is what I'm looking at. I mean, name somebody I might be missing, but Brown's got to step up. Dent's got to step up. Which, aren't we moving Dent to? From what I understood, we were moving Dent possibly down, so I don't know if he's even going to be considered for safety. So I don't know. Jamie's going to be a hard spot to fill. I don't know how well Cypress plays safety, because we're going to need him at corner. Is AZ a safety type? Is he the type that can move, or do you want to keep him at corner? So I don't know. That's a very good question. That's the hell with you, Taylor, for mind-boggling the hell out of me, because I haven't thought about the state. I was just happy for Jamie to move on to the NFL. But when I first took my first look at it, I was like, well, Brown's got to step up. So I'm gonna essentially go with Brown has to step up and become that guy. He's just got to.
I think Shyheim has all the ability. Shyheim's got, you just got to get reps. That's just one of the big problems, is that he plays both safeties. So like with Akeem being injured And with Jamie, then you got to figure out which one you want to go, even though I think he more comfortably plays the safety position in which Jamie plays. AZ is probably just your corner. I think he's definitely going to be a guy that's going to step up into a role. But I also look at we're supposed to be looking at this kid Jihad from out of Syracuse. I think we have a really, really good shot at trying to bring him in. That's a stopgap for you to be able to develop your guys that are coming in here to play safety. It's also a great opportunity for the young man we just signed out of St. Thomas Aquinas to be able to step up and potentially see what he could do at safety. So I think where they have to really want to get versed, here's how you help your secondary. Very easy, foolproof plan. It's helped Alabama for years. Get your front seven so cold that they ain't got time to throw it they ain't got time to throw it. Yep. And that's why you need Verse to come back, bring this young man from South Carolina, because it seems, or actually just look at what South Carolina has, and let's just keep tampering like we're accused of, because apparently we do really, really good shopping with South Carolina groceries. So go look at South Carolina's roster. Be like, oh, we need that safety right here. Come on over here and play with us. That just seems to work better for us.
Another one that I'm going to throw in. Do you feel like we're taking care of, and Taylor, you can start with the answer. Do you feel like we're taking care of at linebacker with what we've got right now?
Yeah, I think linebacker is really good at this point. I think the one thing you're worried about with Blake Nicholson, because I know a lot of people want to see him have meaningful snaps, he's not enrolling until the summer. So that's going to be a little bit more of an issue for him, because I think his development is going to be a little bit more extended. And you may not see him until maybe redshirt sophomore year, redshirt freshman, something like that in terms of everything there. He's got a bit more weight on him too. But DeMarco Ward, big guy, early enrollee, could step in a little bit. I think Omar Graham Jr. is eventually going to have to step up a little bit, just because I think he's going to have more meaningful snaps. You got three veteran guys. You got Bethune, you got Deloach, you got Brendan Gant. You got all three of those redshirt seniors at this point coming in and being successful. I think all three of those guys are going to play it effectively, but you're going to have a couple of those games where they're going to have to come in and play a little bit more in terms of just getting more experience. I think that's what happened this year. You had those 6-7 blowouts, and you have to get some of those guys in to be prepared for next season. I think you're definitely going to have to do that at the linebacker position, because you're probably going to have to go to the portal next season to get more of an experienced option to kind of replace the three that you had before to kind of step up for what you're missing for next year. But yeah, those two, Tatum Bethune and also Kalen DeLoach, I made a post about this. There hasn't been a bigger duo in terms of linebackers since 2015, probably.
Yeah.
With Northrop, I think that's the guy that you're looking at there, that really the linebacker position has been kind of lackluster for Florida State. Now it's starting to shape up in a nice level. I think both those guys are tackling machines at this point. Specifically, Tatum Bethune, I think, can really do a good job. Kalen DeLoach has done a really good job in spying the quarterback as well. He's done really efficiently when we're able to kind of have a spy on the quarterback as well. We're going to really need that next year in the first game against LSU.
Well, I will say this, and I agree. I'm glad the way that you broke down the linebacker room, because I agree that we're okay. The reason I asked the question, because the question was asked up quite above where we're at. But I will say that other than the running back room, which would be I'm saying this room's a close second. Defensive tackle with Odell Higgins. This is probably the best defensive tackle room that I've seen in a decade. If you've got Fabo coming back, you bring in Darrell Jackson. You got Malcolm Ray still here, right?
Yeah, and you got Braden Fisk as well.
You got Fisk that just came in. And then you also throw in Toa. I don't know how to say his last name, but
Fossey.
Hey, yo.
Fossey.
Yeah.
God have mercy. What a defensive tackle room. And then you move over. Isn't Fisk like a tweener? He goes back and forth between edge and –
He can. I think he's more of, if you play him at defensive end, it's going to be more of the Fox position more so. But he's about 6'4", 300 pounds, so I don't quite see him being there. He's not a zero technique at all. But I do like him at that defensive tackle spot. I think he can be very efficient. I don't think he's more of your Robert Cooper, where it's just you're going to be a run stuffer and kind of controlling the line of scrimmage. I think he's a really aggressive pass rusher that had 6.5 sacks last season and can be really, really effective in a pass rush role. especially if you really don't know what's going on with Jared Verse. I think that's the biggest question mark with the defensive tackle room. How well can they be is because of Jared Verse.
Right. Definitely agree. I think it'd be really cool for Jared Verse to all let us know on the 5th what he's doing. Just because he's number 5. I think that would be cool. Guys, look, when there's over 300 people in the live chat, I can't do anything about the bots coming in. There's only one. I can't get rid of it from where I'm at. So y'all just keep commenting and it'll go away. Do y'all feel like, what about this defensive end that entered the transfer portal from South Carolina? And I don't know his name. But do you think Florida State goes after him? Is he a get for Florida State at this point?
I believe Gilbert Edmond is actually visiting Wednesday or Thursday. I can't remember which day. Solid, not anything spectacular. Reserve role at South Carolina.
Is that the Fitton kid?
What was it?
Is that the Fitton kid?
Uh-oh.
So the one I'm talking about, and I might be wrong, he might not be at South Carolina, but there's a kid, last name's Fitton, that we'll see. I'll go find him. I'm probably off on what he's an edge, but he's at South Carolina. So yeah, go look at the edge Fitton from South Carolina. Go look him up. I think he's a get, in my opinion, from what I saw. I'm not saying he's visiting. I just think Florida State should reach out, especially not knowing what Verse is doing. I think he's a good potential plan to bring in. And it does look like we're taking everything from South Carolina. I mean, we're even going after DB coach at this point. So,
James, I was going to ask you something. So I know Lamont Green Sr. had actually tweeted out that Boots was going to Florida State. I believe he's going up there Wednesday.
mm-hmm.
Do you think there's a possibility that he gets some meaningful reps this season?
Oh, without a doubt. The new rule, basically you get 5 games.
Yeah.
I know he's going to play 5 games, and I think it's going to be the best for his career to like just let him see it. Let us see where it goes from there. Don't put him in situations where he has to get exposed. When you play early, you develop, you figure out how to not get bullied. And sometimes you can pick up bad habits or rely on some things too much and then get caught. So I think, but I do think him coming in early helps with him doing well. He already is a workout animal. Nutrition is probably going to get upped a little bit different than it was at home, just because now your schedule is tailored to football as opposed to academics. And so you got a little bit more things that you can do. But to the Gilbert Edmonds kid, I think when I look at what Mike Norvell and them have done a good job of is recruiting body types, frames, and experience. So while he hasn't done much in South Carolina, when we look at the guys that have really been shining, neither has anybody else done much until they got to this level. But at 6'4", about 245, I believe, he's from Fort Pierce, Florida as well. So it's a little bit explosive. I think that's what they really just want. They want guys that come off the edge, that have bend, that are long, and that can go into, again, like Boots. Boots is a long kid, extremely bendy, and can accelerate coming off of the bend. I think that's what JP wants with his defense now.
Well, we've got about 7 minutes left. If you could, let me see. I'm going to ask each one of y'all this last question real quick. Do we feel like Odell Haggins is in the last 2 or 3 years of his career, or do we feel like he's going to go past 5?
I think quite possibly. Nothing wrong with Odell. I mean, I don't think Florida State would ever fire him in terms of that. He's going to retire and walk away. He may even die as the Florida State defensive tackle coach at this point. You may see him on the field at Doak Campbell Stadium at that point. I mean, it's just how it is. He's living proof of bleeding garnet and gold. And man, if he wants to go at 5 or 6 years from now, you let him at this point. But he is what Florida State is, and I'm definitely grateful for him throughout his tenure at Florida State.
There's only 2 coaches you'll never hear me give any kind of critique. It's Odell Haggins and Ron Dugans. I know them guys. I got to see them guys for the rest of my life. If Odell wants to coach for 30 more years, great. he gets the opportunity to. He's earned that. But I do think he's a great mentor. I'm a great guy. I think if he says he mentally can continue to do it and physically can continue to do it, he just needs somebody to maybe come and handle the recruiting stuff for him, which I think you should be helping him with anyway.
Well, everyone, I appreciate it. Chip, what are your thoughts on Odell Higgins? Do you feel like he's getting ready to hang it up, or do you think he's going to coach for 5+ more years?
Odell can go out when Odell wants to. Odell has earned that right. Odell has bled garnet and gold since he wore it himself, and he did that horrible Seminole rap back in the '89. But yeah, that was horrible. But no, Odell has bled garnet and gold, and just like Dugan's, like I have no affiliation with the university, but those two guys sweat blood and tears for that place. So hey, when Odell wants to go out, Odell can go out.
Well, everyone, as always, I appreciate y'all coming on. I've got about 4 minutes left. You can find Chip at ChipWesley9 on Instagram and Twitter. You can find him at Unconquered 850 as his group on Facebook. Please go join. He's got numbers of former Noles joining daily. They do a really good job over there. I'm a moderator of the group, and that's where you can find him. Taylor has been putting out nonstop YouTube videos, so go check out his YouTube page at Norvell Central. Also at Norvell Central for Instagram and at Central Norvell for Twitter. Make sure you go give him a follow and pay attention to the articles he puts out from 5th quarter as well. And James, you can find James on all the above as well at Big Game James _36, or you can find him at Sports Den on their YouTube page. He does 3 shows a week. Make sure that you go check him out on Den Media. And I appreciate y'all coming on, guys. I've got about 3 minutes left, and I'm going to finish up with a couple of things and see y'all in the near future, Thursday. Well, everyone, this show was absolutely full of information. I am a big Antonio Cromartie fan, and I've seen him interact with young men. I've seen him interact with recruits, and I think he would be a hell of a get for Florida State. Does that mean that's who we're going to get? No, but I think you have to at least have that conversation. I think it would be a great hire for Florida State. If you don't hire him as a DB coach, then hire him as an off-the-field staff. He's already used to that, and get him groomed for that position in the future. Because we're not always going to have the same coaches. We know that. This is no longer the Bobby Bowden era of football. You don't hold on to coaches for 30 years. Mickey Andrews staying the entirety of Bobby Bowden's career. Those years or that time frame of what football used to be is over. That's unfortunate, but it's the truth. Everyone's looking for their next position move up. They're all looking for their promotion, and it doesn't always come at the school that they're currently at. So I personally think that bringing on Cromartie would be a perfect hire, regardless of where. You just need to have him on the staff because of what he can do in the state of Florida and recruiting. You just have to get people like that. We're lacking a little bit in recruiting, but the 2024 class is definitely showing to be a diamond because of who is already committed, who we're having the conversations with, who are coming down into the last 15, 8, and the last 3 spots for their top schools. So obviously we're talking to the right kids, but I want to make sure we close on those kids. And you do have to get a DB coach, in my opinion, rather fast because spring ball will be here before you know it, and you don't want, the situation to be you don't know who your DB coach is. So that's got to happen quite fast. I do appreciate everybody for coming and watching. Make sure you subscribe and make sure that you like the video. And if you didn't catch all of